Happy Thanksgiving to all, and welcome to the official Colorado Sports Hall of Fame podcast. I'm Dave Plati.
And I'm Jim Saccomano, and we're your co hosts. Between us, we have 88 years of experience working in media relations in Colorado sports. Myself with the Broncos, Dave with CU, and both of us with the Denver Bears. Remember them?
I sure do. Okay, if you've listened to our first three podcasts, you know we've been interviewing the inductees from the 2026 class for the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. 3 down, 3 to go. So we hope to get the other 3 here before the end of the year. You can pull up archived podcasts with Cordell Stewart, Gigi Fernandez, and Steve Foley on the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame website. That's coloradosports.org. Click on the menu bar and then podcasts.
You know, in the coming weeks, we hope to be joined by Harry Hollins, Wendy Koenig, and Pat Lever. The six will be enshrined next April 16th at the Hilton City Center in downtown Denver.
And one of the reasons we started our podcast was most of our topics are going to center around sports history within and around the state, leading into revealing the state's top 150 moments heading into Colorado's sesquicentennial on August 1st, 2026. That's the date for Colorado's 150th birthday, after being admitted to the Union as the 38th state back in 1876. We have a select committee to select these moments, 9 of us in all with over 250 years involved in state of Colorado sports.
We're planning to start that countdown the first week of January in 2026, 5 per week, with 1 per day come July for the top 10. We hope to have an occasional guest or two from those moments as they relive them with us. Until we start the countdown, Dave at present has isolated over 1,800 moments in state history. We'll reference many of those prior to the countdown, and also we'll recognize an event or two on their anniversary dates. But what we'll do today is reference a few highlights of past happenings on this date, November 27th, and also talk about some of our experiences in and around Thanksgiving weekend with the Broncos and Buffaloes.
So let's shoot back to November 27th, 1980. CU alum David Williams, he was our quarterback in 73 to 75. He made NFL history on that date, which was actually a Thanksgiving Day in itself, when he returned the overtime kickoff 95 yards for a touchdown to give the Chicago Bears a 23 to 17 win over the Lions in Detroit. It was the first and only time in overtime to date that ended with a kickoff return for a touchdown.
You know, I can remember seeing that one on television. Many of these I saw in person. This one, though, I didn't. November 27th, 1960. Buffalo, leading 17 to 7 at halftime, blitzed the Broncos for 3 more scores to take a 38 to 7 lead, which it held as late with as 4:39 left in the third quarter, and it's snowing like heck. That's when Frank Tripucka connected with Lionel Taylor for an 80-yard touchdown pass, which the duo would follow with connecting on 24 and 35-yard TD passes in the fourth quarter that sliced the Bills' lead to 38-28. Fullback Don Allen scored on a 1-yard plunge, with Gene Mingo converting the PAT kick. The Denver defense held, and Tripucka took over with 1:14 remaining, drove Denver from its 33 to the Buffalo 12, where with 4 seconds left, Mingo's 19-yard field goal forced a 38-38 tie, completed an amazing 31-point comeback. Tripucka completed 19 passes for 328 yards, with Taylor catching 9 for 199, while Mingo scored 14 points as he scored Denver's first TD with 5 extra points and the game-tying field goal.
You know, when you think about a 31-point comeback, I think that's overlooked because the game ended in a tie. But, you know, how many 31-point comebacks have ever happened in football anywhere? It's got to be pretty rare.
I remember the next day in the Denver Post, they had a picture of the South Stands, and there was very clear, it was row after row, there were 2 people sitting there huddled, just as cold as heck. You know, I don't want to say judgmentally, but they looked like they were cold as heck. 2 people in the South Stands.
And, you know, it's funny, when you look back at box scores around that time, you see field goals of distances of, 19 yards was actually kind of long, because back then there were a lot of 8 and 9 yard field goals because most people don't realize the goalposts were on the goal line.
That's right.
So a 19-yard field goal today would have to take place with the line of scrimmage really being the one, because at some point in the last 10 or 12 years, it used to be about 7 yards from the line of scrimmage to where the holder put the ball down, and somewhere that shifted from 7 to 8. I'm not sure when that
I
happened, but now
agree. Yeah.
now it's 8 yards. But it's funny when you look at box scores back and you see somebody kicking an 8-yard field goal,
Yeah, it's
which I don't think
amazing.
I could do. I don't think I could kick an 8-yard field goal.
I don't think I could either, although I did once upon a time.
Then we go back to 2002, November 27th again. Let's throw some love up to Colorado State because this coach had one of the great careers in all college sports. After 26 years of coaching, which his teams compiled a 637 and 164 record, Colorado State head volleyball coach Tom Hilbert retired. In his last home match, the Rams beat Denver in 3 games to win his final conference title. His teams earned an invitation to the NCAA tournament 14 times.
Which is tremendous in its own right. November 27th, 1987, Air Force senior defensive tackle Chad Hennings was named the Defensive Player of the Year in the WAC. He was in on 87 tackles with 31 tackles for loss that include a WAC record 24 quarterback sacks, along with 5 passes broken up, 5 forced fumbles, and 3 recoveries. Great year.
And I think that was Air Force's first of 2 trophies, if I'm not mistaken. Well,
Uh,
with
that
turkeys
sounds
on
right.
millions, wasn't it? Was that Jim?
That sounds right to me.
Yep. Well, with turkeys on millions of tables today and our jobs with the Buffaloes and Broncos, we've had a lot of experiences in and around Thanksgiving. In CU's case, from 96 to 2011, we played on the Friday after Thanksgiving, all but one of those games against Nebraska. But well before that, CU played 45 times on actual Thanksgiving Day, which I don't think anybody really remembers. The first few games were against the Denver Athletic Club in the late 1890s. Then it was Colorado Mines. Then we had a few with Colorado A&M, which morphed into Colorado State. But most of the games were with the University of Denver starting in 1925 until the last time we met in 1947. The year after that, CU left the Mountain States Conference for the Big Seven. Denver, of course, stopped playing football after the 1960 season. But those games mostly were in Denver at DU Stadium. But the crowds were pretty much split. A couple were in Boulder. But a lot of those games with Denver were memorable and often was for the Mountain States title at times.
Mm-hmm.
But my probably, when going back, and this will probably be obvious, if you had to pick the number one CU game in and around Thanksgiving, that's going to be 2001. It was November 23rd, the Friday after Turkey Day. And that was a certain bumper sticker that was around for years that said 62-36. That's when the Buffs, ranked 14th, were 7-0 in the division. Or, excuse me, 6-1 in the division, playing number 3 Nebraska, which was 7-0 in the Big 12's North Division. And we came out like gangbusters. They couldn't stop our running game. Chris Brown and Bobby Purify went crazy. It was all I can remember watching the replay. Obviously, I can't hear it in the booth, in the press box. But at one point, Brett Musburger, who was calling the game for ABC, said, "Folks, do not adjust your set. That score is correct." It was when Colorado took a 35-3 lead early in the second quarter against Nebraska. We went on to win 62-36, and the following Saturday, we went down in front of a hostile crowd in Irving, Texas, and beat Texas in the Big 12 championship game, then went on to the Fiesta Bowl. So that's probably my number one game memory from Thanksgiving weekend. What do you have, Jim?
Well, first of all, I have a memory from that game. During the week, the coach was asked on his coach's show the game plan, which is kind of a ridiculous question, but they asked it anyway. And he said, "Hey, diddle diddle, we're going to run up the middle." And after the game, they said, "Boy, we're shocked at the running game." He said, "I told you we were going to do it. I told you exactly what our game plan was." And it was. We played on Thanksgiving Day 11 times, 3 times at home. In fact, our last time playing on the holiday as a home team came against the New York Giants in 2009. The NFL added a third game on the day with someone else getting to play host besides Detroit and Dallas. And, it's interesting. it used to be all the games were at Detroit. Then it's now a long time ago, but 50 years ago, they started playing a second game. The other network wanted a game on Thanksgiving Day. And at the league meetings, they uh, they were trying to get another team to say yes, and nobody wanted to play on Thanksgiving Day. And finally, Tex Schramm of the Cowboys said, "We'll play on Thanksgiving Day as long as you guarantee us that we'll always have a game on Thanksgiving Day." And they said, "Oh yeah, that's great. Now the whole world would love to play on Thanksgiving and wants to, but the Cowboys have got it." Um, I remember back in '62 when I spent the day mostly playing football with my cousin on their lawn. You know, it was like a 20-yard field, and it seemed like 100 to me. It was
Yeah.
great, and I came in and watched, and the New York Titans, beat the Broncos 46-45. Johnny Green was quarterback for the Titans. Frank Tripucka was quarterback for the Broncos. And it was great. It was not so much a Thanksgiving Day game. 15,000 people crowded into Bear Stadium to watch it. You know, that was just the game that they played that time on Thanksgiving Day. What I really remember is my first year with the Broncos, 78. We played a game in Detroit. I was talking to Joe Collier in the hotel lobby before we got on the bus. Oh, it was raining so hard in Detroit and rained all day. And Joe was bemoaning the fact that that year they had gone to the Silver Dome, that Detroit had an indoor facility. And he said, outdoors, Detroit would not gain a yard against our defense. But indoors, it'll be different. And sure enough, the Lions won the game 17-14 that day, 11-22, 23-78, my first game. But and of course, I remember the two games at Dallas. And people think of the Cowboys as so powerful, but the Broncos have beaten them a lot of times in a row, and I think eight. And they won in overtime at Dallas in '05 and then also in '01. So they've had a pretty good history against the Dallas Cowboys.
The thing about Thanksgiving, which I think people don't realize, now Dallas and Detroit, they always have home games, so they don't have to travel. But
Right.
in our case, on Thanksgiving Friday, we often had to travel. A team would leave on Thursday, and we, of course, were used to advancing games. So I'd either leave for Lincoln on Tuesday, usually on Tuesday, maybe on Wednesday. But to be honest, I tried to get out on Tuesday because there was a little less airport traffic. But one thing I remember, we used to stay at the Cornhusker Inn in Lincoln, and they served the best Thanksgiving dinner for the public. They would probably feed 750 to 1,000 people on Thanksgiving Day. So it was impossible to get in there and have Thanksgiving dinner. The team, had to be limited because if they were serving so many people, it was really, they were just feeding the team and the coaches. So the rest of the staff, we were kind of on our own. There weren't many restaurants open. So a couple of times on the Wednesday night, whoever was in town with me, we went to the Hy-Vee and bought a bunch of like tuna fish sandwiches or
Oh,
whatever
that's
we could
great.
find to have at the hotel
Tuna
because
on Thanksgiving.
because there was no room service on Thanksgiving, so it was really kind of crazy. So this year we were going to Nebraska, we were going, oh great, another boring Thanksgiving dinner. But the last two times we went there, or the 2002, 2004, when you win the game, you could care less about what you had for turkey, and you came back home and you would have late Thanksgiving dinners, we'd have orphan Thanksgiving dinners, things like that. But the thing I remember was when you're traveling, it was always kind of interesting what you were going to do. And that Wednesday night was kind of you'd go out the Lincoln. There was Missy's Steakhouse, that's where you had your Thanksgiving, except you had beef and not turkey.
Um, when you played at the Cowboys, they always had a big dinner on Wednesday night, and that is the network did, and they invited the Cowboys PR and Broncos PR, and it was pretty cool. You know, little kids running around, and it was a lot of fun. And so we had Thanksgiving dinner on Wednesday night. That's the way it goes. That's just the way it goes in professional football.
Well, my actually one of my better memories was 2003. Uh, ABC was in to do our game with the Huskers, so they had Thanksgiving dinner at a local Boulder restaurant. So they invited me, and I told them, well, my dad's in town. Says, well, why don't you come and down, bring your dad with you? So okay. So it was at Dolan's in Boulder. So I go in there and I wasn't expecting to, see with anybody special. So I walk in there and then Keith Jackson called me over and said, I want you and your father to sit with me and my wife and Dan Fouts.
That is
So
so cool, Dave.
and I'm thinking, I'm trying to act like it's, oh, okay, sorry, with my dad around, I'm trying to act like this is no big deal. Inside, I'm going, I'm having Thanksgiving dinner with Keith Jackson. And my
Yeah.
dad was just in awe. But the funny thing I remember about that is since they were close to the same age, they started talking about all these football players they were referencing from like the 1940s. And Dan Fouts leaned over to me and said, who the hell are they talking about? I'm like, I don't know.
You
But
know,
that was pretty memorable for me.
yes, that's a great moment. And, think of it, that was a great moment for your dad that
Oh,
his son had that set up. And it was probably just a wonderful, wonderful moment for him.
I mean, when I think of, moments in my life where, you know, just things that just happened by accident, the only other one I could think was at the COSIDA convention in 1994 in Chicago. We went to the Playboy offices and all the SIDs got a pose with a bunny. So I'm sitting, they gave you the Hugh Hefner bathrobe. And so you're wearing the Hugh Hefner, red and black bathrobe. The bunny comes over and sits on your lap. So I go to Gary Cole, who's running it. Hey, don't bald guys get two bunnies? So they send over this blonde. So she sits on one side of me. We take the picture. 3 years later, my girlfriend's looking at the photo and she goes, oh my God, do you know who that is? And I go, I don't know, some Playboy bunny. It was Jenny McCarthy.
Oh my gosh.
I never knew that. So
Wow.
those are the two celebrity instances in my life because we meet a lot of celebrities. We're not usually in awe, but those are two instances in my life where I just automatically think back to those.
I once had one at the Super Bowl. I was going down near the end of early in the fourth quarter, just going down to start the stuff. And a guy at the elevator says, "Oh, hi, how you doing? How you doing?" And shake hands with everybody. Hi, how you doing? How you doing? Fine, fine, fine. Get on the elevator, and my friend Gary Wright of the Seahawks says, "Boy, that's pretty cool meeting Dan Aykroyd." And I said, "Who the heck met Dan Aykroyd?" And he said, "You just did. You shook hands with him." So, oh well, I was focused on something else, I guess.
Well, I actually, my dad's cousin was a cameraman with NBC, so early on, we could get tickets to Saturday Night Live pretty easy when I was in New York, growing up in New York. And the thing about Saturday Night Live was it was the rehearsal show was at 8 o'clock, so I went to that more than I went to the live show. And they would judge like what would they keep in the show 8 o'clock and what they would kick out due to the audience reaction. But I remember once I was riding up with my friend going to the show, and Jerry Seinfeld was in the elevator.
That's
So
pretty good.
I said something like, "Do you ever notice people in the elevator just look at the numbers going up?" Aimed at him, and he just rolled his eyes at me. And I felt like the biggest dork in the world after I said that. But that was I never talked to him really. I just tried to pull a Seinfeld, and it didn't work. So
Oh well, a moment in time.
sure, my other Thanksgiving game memory is really in Boulder. It was again after it was a Saturday though, but it's back in 2016. We needed to beat Utah to win the division title. The only one we won the Pac-12, and I think what's most impressive about that is that at the end of Thanksgiving week, the students usually string back slowly, but we had 14,000 students return early to be at that game, and Folsom Field was jam-packed. It was rowdy. It was as noisy as it gets in college football. And we beat Utah 27-22 and went on to the Pac-12 championship game. But that week, that 2 week stretch, actually, we had Washington State at home the Saturday before, and the students had stayed for that too. So what was impressive was they shortened their Thanksgiving break instead of usually, well, face it, you're in college, you're leaving on Wednesday or Thursday before Thanksgiving and missing the last 2 days of
Right, right.
classes. But they stayed and left Sunday and came back Friday. So that was probably one of the most impressive things I ever saw with our student body because they wanted to support Mike
Hmm.
McIntyre and that team we had with Philip Lindsay, of course, went on to play for the Broncos, and Chidobe Awuzie and Jimmy Gilbert. We had a lot of good players on that team. Sefo Lufau was the quarterback, of course. So that was a lot of good memories from that game.
That I remember vividly the game again, the one in 1978, Detroit beats Denver 17-14. All week long, Red Miller is saying, "Boy, we played Thanksgiving Day. I am going to take Friday off. I am going to take Friday off." He says this repeatedly throughout the week. I am taking Friday off. Okay, so we lose the game in Detroit because it was really bad weather and they had a Silver Dome. Um, then I went in. This is crazy. I went into work on the program on Friday. I just didn't think anything of it. I mean, I really didn't think anything of it. Everybody else is gone, but there were two guys in the office, me and Red Miller. And I go to Red. I said, "Red, I thought you were going to take today off." He said, "What the hell would I do with a day off?" And obviously, losing the day before had triggered everything in him. And so he was a coach who worked on that Friday after Thanksgiving.
And that's when the Bronco offices were at 5700 Logan Street,
That's exactly right.
which is about, what, 2 miles from your house?
Yeah, yeah, if that.
But it's funny because you look at the Bronco compound, complex, whatever you want to call it now, and it's massive. And back then, I remember the offices being kind of longish, like back from the street. It was a pretty deep building, if I'm not mistaken. But still, when you think about 5700 Logan, that was really about the width of the size of a house, wasn't it?
That's right. About the width of it, a lot longer than that, of course. But it's interesting because at that time in '78, the staff of the Broncos was like two people per department, really. And now it's enormous. It's just crazy. I don't want to say it's ridiculous. It's normal for the time, but it's just crazy. Like they're building a new facility there at the Broncos. It's like they're building a ship. It's unbelievable the size of the new facility. Oh well, times change.
And then staffs multiply, that's for sure. I remember
They sure do.
when I was a freshman and sophomore at CU, Tim Simmons, who's our executive producer, had me type a staff directory, and I found one the other day, and there were 78 people that we managed to reduce on the Xerox and squeeze on page one. 78 people now is almost the size of the football department alone. And I remember Rick George, when he was our operations director and recruiting coordinator for football, he said to me once, "They've got 9 people doing what I used to do by myself."
Hmm.
So exponentially, staffs just increase. You
They
know,
do. I remember one time later in my years with the Broncos when I was looking through some old photos and I was looking for our 1960 coaching staff. I couldn't seem to find it, but I did come across this picture with the three guys in it. And the guy in the middle looked like the head coach at the time. And finally, it dawned on me. Wait a second! I looked at the caption. It was the offensive assistant, the defensive assistant, and the head coach. Three guys.
that's yeah. I know. I look at coaching staffs from the '50s and see you. There were like 4 or 5 guys, and
Yeah,
one of them was usually the track coach, and the other one might have been the wrestling coach. So, but that's how it was in those days. So,
that's right. Things.
well, we hope you are enjoying our podcast. Don't be shy in spreading the word. We're still in our infancy. We need to thank our sponsors, Pasta J's of Boulder, located at 10th and Pearl, just west of the Pearl Street Mall. Try the Dream Chili Ravioli as an appetizer. Trust me. And the Colorado Collegiate Chronicle, an in-depth weekly look at college sports around the state, published weekly by Tim Simmons. Although he's really getting into publishing it more than once a week lately with all the happenings in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference and around the state.
It's great. And as always, we look forward to you tuning in weekly to enjoy our reminiscing with our Colorado Sports Hall of Fame guests, as well as our trips back into the state's sports history. Memory lane. Thank you, guys.